One. All right, everybody. We got Sean Hayes. Sean's got a big new life journey here, but we wanted to kind of get into almost a reflective moment off of his time with the WWE, working with NXT, as well as some of the other experiences he's had between the Texans, Penn State, and his time as an athlete at Harvard. So, Sean, I want to introduce you and take a chance to go through what you got going on, and then go
Yeah.
through KPIs, man.
All right, let's do it. Yeah. So you talk about the reflective time with WWE. I spent 6.5 years there down in Orlando, Florida, developing the next generation of superstars for the WWE. It was man, it's crazy to think about how fast it went. It seems like yesterday I was kind of presented with the opportunity to leave the Houston Texans to take on that journey. And then it's like, man, it's already over. So that's wild. In 2016, I left Bill O'Brien, Craig Fitzgerald, and the Houston Texans to join up with WWE and Paul Levesque, Triple H, and Matt Bloom, who's the head coach down there at WWE Performance Center. And man, just kind of embarked on this world that is professional wrestling and sports entertainment, and I'm just so fortunate to experience that. And grew up as a huge fan. Watched it ever since I was little and continue to watch it. And it's like you don't really think about it when you're there because it's like a job, but then when you, now that I'm away from it, now that I'm kind of embarking on another journey, it's looking back, it's like, wow, it's pretty cool to be a part of the WWE, being such a big fan and helping out as just for 6.5 years, is a long time. It wasn't. So it was a very good experience because I felt it was like such a unique environment in the sense that you had all these types of athletes in one weight room, and I felt like I was probably this is how I felt. I don't know if it's true or not, but I felt like, man, I'm the luckiest strength coach. I'm probably the only strength coach that has this type of weight room. And that's how I felt, and that's why I knew it was such a special place, because you had people from all different backgrounds. You had people from former athletes from the NFL, from MMA, NBA, WNBA. You had people from different countries. You had male, female. You had big, small, everything in between, American Ninja Warriors to bodybuilders to, football players, the boxers, the people that from India, China. 45% of our roster was at one point from different outside of the U.S. So I felt like it was like a very unique environment in that sense. And after having gone through that, I felt like I can kind of attack anything. And that's kind of like how I felt to taking on this new journey. Is I felt I was ready to embark on it because of the experiences I had with WWE.
So walk us through 6.5 years ago when you first took the job with NXT. It was a completely blank slate. Like, you didn't have a weight room, you didn't have any like infrastructure to follow, right? What would that felt like, and what were some of the things early on you thought you wanted to really focus in on to help get that program initiated?
Yeah, good question. I remember that day like it was yesterday. Probably some other. I wish I could remember a lot of other times like I can remember that, because I had some great times there, but a lot of football. My memory's not that great. I need to get up on my Alpha GPC.
Oh yeah.
But so here we go. I left Houston on a Friday. I arrived to the Performance Center on Monday. Well, what I'm thinking in my head is I'm thinking WWE, big time global company. I'm going to walk into a weight room that looks like something I just left with the NFL weight room. That wasn't the case. I walked in, there was a weight room, but there was stuff that was like all scattered around. It was no rhyme or reason. It was very much just like, if you can imagine, just big square footage, 5,000 square foot of stuff, but just kind of stuff aware, no rhyme or reason. And I walked in and I this is what I thought. I'm like, oh no, what did I get myself into? Because this is not what I thought it was. That was my first reaction. Oh no, what did I get myself into? This isn't performance. This is just looks like stuff. So after kind of digesting that, the first thing that we had to, was going through my mind is how to create this flow, right? How do we take what we have and kind of, create this flow of a weight room? I wanted to kind of, when I think about weight room, and this goes back to, you and I have a lot of discussions about what's important in a weight room. And then, you look about what we had gone through with the Houston Texans and Penn State, and some of the things we messed up with Penn State, some of the things we messed up with the Houston Texans as far as weight room design. I know that we wanted to have some flow. There's need to be the rack side, right? There needs to be space for the racks. That's where you're going to do your performance stuff. That's where you're going to squat and your bench and your dead and your performance lifts. You needed to have this flow of open turf area where we could do our dynamic warm-up settings. And then we had our kind of auxiliary movements where our dumbbells and, machines and things like that, so that's kind of how I wanted to do it. That was like my first kind of challenge was how do I kind of take what's here and then kind of set it up in a flow. And then over time, it's like, all right, how can I talk to our budget guy to get some of this and then get some of that and then get, slowly type of build this thing. And then it was very kind of like, all right, prove my worth with the company and show up and work hard until they eventually were like, man, this guy's busting his ass. Like, let's see what he has to say. And then that's when I said, we need more turf space. We need pitch sharks. We need reverse hyper. So it took a little while to get there, but I put my head down, grinded, kind of like proved myself in that sense where I was like, all right, I'm not going to sit here and ask for all these things. I'm going to get to work with what I got, which was good. It just was, I needed to create the space. And then after about 6 months to a year stuff, they started to kind of trust me and they started to open up a little bit as far as like, oh, you need more space? Yeah. Okay, here we go. And that's where we kind of expanded the turf space. We got some pitch sharks, some reverse hypers, some things like that. We kind of really made better use of the space. And to this day, that's what I'm carrying with me is one of the most important things for a weight room. As I'm with the XFL and we're designing weight rooms as we speak, we got to have these are big guys. These are big athletes, and space I think gets kind of, it's not as the first thought. It's an afterthought, so to speak. So having that space is what was crucial for us, especially with the WWE, because we were training large groups at a time. We were having, anywhere from 10 to 20 people in a group. So that became really crucial. It's something that I take with me now is what is really important for to have in a performance weight room.
So I think that's actually a really good segue. So, point of this talk about key performance indicators, and year one, just kind of like basically running around with your hair on fire, trying to figure out how do I get this room to allow me to just basically do a program that resembles what I want to do. But the other part is effectively figuring out what to do to get to some sort of functional outcome. And early on, I'm sure there was a lot of like, I have an instinct about this, but what were you leaning in on early on in the WWE of what to do, and what were you trying to learn about what actually makes a great WWE athlete or superstar?
Yeah, great question. I think the first part of that is you nailed it right in the head, running around with your hair on fire. It's, you as much as you think you going in there with a plan, my plan was day one, I knew what I wanted to do with a lower body day. It was a Monday. I had that as a plan. This is what I wanted to do. I wanted to kind of set the tempo. We're going to train they didn't train as a team, right? They didn't train. It was a come in, kind of do what you want type thing. And it was just there to do something. It was just kind of there for them to train. So I wanted to set the tempo right away, almost like a, college football setting or a, pro setting where it's, hey, this is what we're doing. We're doing all this dynamic warm up together. Then we're going to teach the box squat. Then we're going to do some sled drags, or kind of had that plan. And then from there, it was like run around with your hair on fire, kind of get this thing, get that. That was the most important thing is we train as a team now, and we are a team. So then as we get rolling with that, when you're talking about what's important, what this is where you and I have such good conversations because our settings were very similar. We train year round, right? Where's the payoff for these guys? There is no payoff for, it's like their payoff is their in-ring shows. But this group was developmental. They didn't really necessarily have a payoff. There wasn't a game on Sundays. So I was thinking, what is our payoff? And this is how this whole KPI thing started. I didn't think about it from a KPI standpoint. I thought about it was, what can I do to give these guys a payoff? So our payoff was a WWE combine, right? It was you train your butt year round. What do you got to, what's the kind of payoff? So we kind of developed this kind of a testing day. I guess if you think about it from a college football setting, a max day, or an NFL a combine, how they do the 3 days combine. We kind of set the stage of a WWE combine, and that's how it got this juices flowing of KPIs. Back then, I wasn't thinking about KPIs. I was thinking about let's do something cool. Then as the years progressed, I go to muscle mentorships. I start seeing the value and hearing you speak of key performance indicators and assessing that, and then taking that and then seeing how we're getting better, right? So that's where I was like, all right, I got something cool with this WWE combine. How can we kind of make that 2 for 1? That's our KPI. That's our assessment. These new people coming in, bam, our KPIs are these 8 events for a WWE athlete. And then we tried to make it specific. And then as we, right before I felt like I was kind of getting that going. And then, I've recently just left. But now if you look at it from 2022, we did 8 events. That these 8 events are broken up into 2 days. And these are our KPIs for WWE. We had overhead med ball toss. We felt like that was a really good indicator of power, total body power. You throw it maximally as far as you can. Females 10-pound med ball, males 20-pound med ball. We had broad jump. We had vertical jump. Those are pretty standard WWE combine or NFL combine events. That's lower body power, vertical displacement, horizontal displacement. We had a in-ring shuttle. So we wanted to make this more specific to the WWE. So it was a timed event, more of a, hit the ropes 3 times, see how similar to a 5-10-5 in the football setting. So we had that as our 4 speed athletic days. We come back day 2 and we're focused more on strength. We had our IMTP, which we utilized force plates, which was our lower body strength, kind of like a max deadlift. We had pull-ups. We had a cardio testing, which was we wanted to throw. That was felt like we needed to have some stamina test, and then we had I'm missing one. We did. I have to think about it now. It's like we did a pull up. We did. Oh, it was gosh dang it, it was. I have to kind of think about it. But it was 8 events: strength day, athletic day, strength day, and then what happens is now you have these things where you have this leaderboard. You have key performance indicators where we can progress and we can say, hey, this is where you're at. This is where the top NXT people were. Your Bianca Belairs, your Riddick Moss, your Ken Crawfords, who's Street Profits, Montez Ford. You have all these people, Mandy Rose, all these people that are on this leaderboard, Raquel Gonzalez, all these people that are on SmackDown, on Raw. When you walk in, wow, this is what they did. And then this is how we can kind of progress and have something there. Not only to compete, but to compete against yourself to see where you stand as a NXT superstar. So that's how it developed into from just doing something cool to see like what do WWE superstars need. This is what they need, and it turned into KPIs as well.
Now you were running that twice a year.
So as we progressed, we were doing it twice a year. So it became early on, February, we got everybody in at the same, everybody do it. It wasn't a big event. It was just in-house event. And then we're going to do it in August, September-ish. So that's going to be our big televised event. But that way you get, because with WWE, you constantly had the revolving door, new people coming in. So we felt like doing it twice a year was good because you're going to get pretty much everybody within two settings. So one, you might not capture the entire roster, and people, it allows you people, if they're going through injuries or things like that to come back from. So, we felt like doing it early on, you can see where you're at. And then here's like the mid year, August, September, we really go for it. We televise it, we make it cool. And Triple H was a real big supporter of that. He loved it. And now it's something a part of WWE. So you talk about like just creating something out of nothing, looking back, wow, that was kind of like just a cool idea I had. And then now, WWE's putting all this kind of support behind it and going to blow up. As they should. It's very, they want to look for a long time. There's a stigma of WWE athletes and sports entertainers that train a certain way, and maybe they just bodybuilders. So like, if now with having something like the WWE Combine being kind of like on a big stage, that helps push the narrative that these are top level athletes. And that's kind of like, one of my goals with going into the whole job back in 2016 was, I kind of want to help push that narrative towards these are, high performance athletes. So I think it's great, whether or not they keep those 8 movements or not, like, hey, make it better, go for it. That's kind of like what we thought WWE athletes needed. They needed speed, they needed power, they needed conditioning, they needed, they needed certain things because they couldn't just be strong, right? They couldn't just be powerful. They had to kind of have that all. And when we felt like whoever won that thing was no doubt the top overall athlete in WWE. And I tell you what, people like Madcap Moss, who's on SmackDown Live, won that thing twice. People like Bianca Belair won that thing 3 times. She's carrying the company on her back right now. As far as if you look at it, as far as Roman Reigns is the top dog, and then you got Bianca Belair who's carrying that thing. And so it's like, look, does it? We know it's scripted. We know it's we know it's entertainment, but that tells you something right there. Like our best that going right now, Bianca Belair won that thing 3 times. And so that was always something cool for me to tell these new coming NXT superstars, like, hey, you don't think this crap is important? Because let me tell you something. You got Madcap Moss's SmackDown Live. He won it twice. You got Montez Ford. His name's still on a leaderboard. You got Bianca Belair, 3-time winner. You got Raquel Rodriguez. She's on the leaderboard. She's SmackDown. So like you had all these these people that set the stage before, in the early years, and it mattered, right? And because guess what? Athleticism, you can't hide it. You can't hide power. I don't care what sport you're in. I don't care if you're in football, basketball. The powerful athletes got the advantage. Brock Lesnar, there's a reason why Brock Lesnar continues to be at the top, because he's a beast, right? He literally is a beast. He's super explosive. I always used him as an example of like what we were trying to shoot for, and maybe it's not always a telltale sign for especially for WWE, because things are scripted and promos matter and character matter. But I tell you what, you got character and you got this athleticism, man, you got a deadly combo right there. And that's what we tried to do with NXT, with our combine, our KPIs. We really try to kind of make that big overall superstar. And we just put all these events together.
Yeah, because like you look at what's marketable for WWE, it's charisma, stage presence, but athleticism and being able to do all the maneuvers and all the acrobatic things like creates a great show. And if they're limited athletically, they can't do nearly the same maneuvers. It becomes a less than show, and they need to be exceptionally strong in the other areas like charisma and stage presence, why would you limit yourself, right? Why would you hold yourself to this small, finite thing that you do, which is a really profound thing to think about. I guess I would like to go into the area of, so you do KPIs, you did it the first year, your first year combine. What did you learn from those tests that influenced your program year to year going forward in order to help you write a better program to meet the goals of some of these tests to help your athlete perform at a higher level?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, you talk about looking at it from, let's just talk about it from a power standpoint, right? That kept being that kept coming up as like, man, that's really important because this is what this thing's all about. The suplex is power. And then so there was really two things that kind of helped me steer my programming. One was power and one was stamina. So the power aspect, you look at it like this. What's the power definition? What is it? It's a math equation, right? It's strength times speed. So when you talk about developing the program, if we need to get more powerful athletes, first thing, what we did, we got VBT device, right? We needed to know if we were training in power zone or not, if we were training in speed or we were training in strength. If you don't have it, you're guessing. And that's something I learned from you, where it's like you needed the objectivity to know whether you were guessing or you're not. So like that was a big thing I learned from you. It was like, bam, we're getting the VBTs because we need power. Hey, we're going to train 4 days a week, 4 to 5 days a week, right? That's just the way our setting was because we saw them so frequently. So we did 2 days of dynamic and 2 days of strength. So speed and strength, if we train that way, we felt like we're going to get that power. We were going to become more powerful. It wasn't necessarily what type of exercise we were doing. It was, are we training in that zone or not? So we put the VBT charts on each rack. We explained, by osmosis, right? Every single day, today's dynamic day, we want to be above 0.75, and then today's strength day, we want to be below 0.75, right? So it was really kind of dialing in on, are you training for strength and are you training for speed? And we felt like if we could kind of it didn't really matter what the lift was. It could have been band bench press. It could have been a power clean. It could have been a band box squat, a speed dead. It could have been a floor press. It didn't really matter. We hooked that VBT device on, and depending on the day, what the emphasis was, that main lift, every major lift we had the VBT on it. So we knew, the athletes knew if they were training for speed and they were training for strength. We felt like that was a good pairing for us to become more powerful. And, now when it's like somebody comes up to me, man, they're 6th on broad jump, right? What do you got to do? Hey, we got to get more powerful. And we say, how do I do that? Well, you show them what you're going to train for strength, you're going to train for speed. And then the other thing that was developed, that kind of like influenced our programming based off the KPIs, was the conditioning aspect. We kept finding out that didn't matter how big you were, didn't matter how strong you were. If you don't have the gas tank, it don't matter, because you're going to blow up in the ring, and it doesn't matter how technical you are, how good you look aesthetically. If you didn't have the gas tank, it was going to be a problem. You blow up in that ring, and anybody that knows wrestling can tell you, whether it's a fan or whether you're somebody that's in it, that's the number one thing. So that really influenced my programming as far as stamina. So the things we did there is we just kind of, we bought things like joint friendly conditioning machines, right? So those are your Versa climbers, those are your ski ergs, your rowers, we bought things like, we had sleds, we utilized them a lot. We did things, and again, going to muscle mentorship with your things like, your implements, like your steel maces and your steel clubs and kettlebells and slam balls. These are all joint friendly movements or joint friendly exercises and machines that you can put these athletes on and not worry about them banging their elbows, them hurting their low back and their knees. So we utilize that a lot, those things a lot, and that influenced our programming, and we really dedicated a day towards that. So if you had 2 days speed and 2 days strength, one of those speed days, right? Let's say it was a lower body dynamic day, because it was our second lower body day of the week. We felt like we could kind of cut into the back end of the workout as far as lower body, because what do athletes train on? They train on their legs, right? They're they're practicing on their legs. So if we felt like we could kind of be conservative on one area of the body, we felt like, okay, it's lower body, right? Because they're getting all that stuff in practice. So we got that main lift in with the dynamic lower, and then the back half was our conditioning day, and that's where we utilized those machines. So we felt like as it was getting, closer to, look, it wasn't like this 2016, right? I learned a lot. So like as it was getting toward the end of my time, it was like, man, we felt really dialed in. We had power and we had conditioning. So that's kind of like how these KPIs came to influence our program, because you take a look at it, like, is the programming helping these athletes get better in these drills? And then so that's kind of like how we utilize that, and then look, you could always be specific to the individual, right? So if somebody did really poorly on our conditioning test, they might do extra conditioning throughout the week or that day. And if somebody needed to be more individualized in their speed and strength, let's take their force plate profile, right? They weren't reactive enough. Well, instead of moving it for 0.75 on their speed, they're moving it faster. They're moving at a 1.0 meters per second. And then instead of it going 0.3 on strength, they're trying to push that at 0.5. So you can really kind of get individual depending on their velocity profile from their jumps and their conditioning tests. But we felt like overall, we wanted to be powerful. We also wanted to be conditioned. Now, of course, you want to stay strong and mobile and all those things. But talking about specific for WE and what those KPIs did for us as far as programming, that's kind of how it influenced us.
Which, and one of the things that we talk a lot about is this idea of we're constantly selling what we do to everyone, right? And I don't think when you're working in the team setting, you really appreciate how much you're actually having to sell what you do to everyone around you, from coaches you work with, from support staff to the actual athletes themselves. Like, you take for granted that there's a little bit of like a dictator-like relationship, but their buy-in to everything that you're doing makes every bit different. When we get in situations like you and I have, or you had and I had, is this, we can't take for granted this idea that they're just going to do what we say without any explanation or any cause. Is that, and I think there's an example here for you, which we've talked a lot about, is with the WWE, there's a little bit of autonomy allowed to the athlete if they're a little bit more of a veteran, or they're a little bit more of like, I'm not going to buy into that 100%. So it's not a foregone conclusion they have to train with you if they're part of NXT or if they're part of the WWE. So with that being said, was there ever an example for that guy who decides to train outside of the NXT, doing KPIs with you, and then coming back and performing poorly, relatively speaking, to your athletes, and you're saying to them, we customize the program to be good at these things because this is what matters in the ring. You're not doing that on your own. You're doing things that, quite frankly, are unspecific or irrelevant, and it's leading into a decreased performance. And did that help? Did that create a situation where you could substantiate what you were doing as more valuable to the people that decided to train with you? Like, was that an asset for you, I guess is what I'm saying, to demonstrate to your athletes, like, this is the best thing for you because this is designed for you?
Yeah, that was definitely an issue throughout those 6 years being there. Not, we had great buy-in overall, but like you said, there was, especially some of the veterans that were in this, they, sure, they didn't have to come in and train with me. So what would happen would be like, I never kind of like, I don't want to say never, like, I learned from my mistakes early on. I welcome that. You're like, hey, you want to go and do that outside? Like, go for it, because, and then sometimes what happened was they go outside, right? And they go do this bodybuilding phase, and they go do too much volume, and what happens? They end up running into a wall and getting beat up, and then they come back. And then when you come back, it's like you don't. I never was like upset, right? Because you got to kind of figure it out yourself. So I was like, I welcomed with open arms, embraced them, and I never said a thing. I said, "Oh yeah, man, I didn't care what day it was, who walked in that door. I don't care if I saw them. If I didn't, it didn't matter to me. What mattered to me is they were on time and we trained. Like that was the only thing. So they would come in. We wouldn't make it a big deal, and I'd welcome them back with open arms. And then one good example of that would be a guy named Cameron Grimes. Cameron Grimes is on NXT Superstar right now. He's one of the best wrestlers in the company overall, not just NXT. But he's going to be a big star in the main roster at some point. I wouldn't say a lot of people would disagree with that. It's just a matter of time. But Cameron was someone that early on worked out with us, and then he kind of climbed up the ranks, didn't have to train with us anymore, went off, did his own thing, came back, had a conversation with me. I remember this conversation clearly. It was at an NXT TV. He walks in, NXT TV night, they're getting ready to perform, and he sees all this new equipment. He sees the force plates. He sees the body composition machine. He's looking at these devices that are the VBT devices. And he's like, "What's this, coach?" And I said, "Yeah, man, this stuff right here, check this out. This is a force plate. Well, what this does, you pop up, you jump up. It's going to measure your force. It's going to measure how quickly you get off the ground. It's going to measure how left and right imbalances, all these things. Oh, you see this device right here? This is going to measure your speed on the bar. You're going to make sure your power, strength, boom, bam. Oh, we really take care of our guys here." And I'm just talking to him like this. I'm talking to him like I'm talking to a coach. No ill will that he kind of like made up his mind that he was going to train outside. And then what really kind of drew him was the science behind it. And then I was showing him the even the subjective thing, the workload management survey. Hey, and then you take a picture of this, you rate your day as far as how hard you work that day, your RPE. All this stuff right here, Cameron, this is for you. But this is not, this is for you, for me to help you take care of your body and make sure that you're doing what the things you do. And then from that conversation, he goes, "Okay, cool, man. I want to try this. I'll come in on Monday." And he came in on Monday, and the rest is history. He's been training there ever since. And he's somebody that kind of, look, he was going to be good. He was going to be good wherever he trained because he's just that person. But he was somebody that I was allowed to go to the coaching staff where I'm like, "Look at this guy, Cameron Grimes. Went outside, did this, came back to us, didn't have to. Body looks great, killing it, never felt better." Like that was a real good example of, for me, to start. You talk about like selling your stuff. I was able to sell the coaches on that really because they were like, "Man, Cameron Grimes is one of our top guys." I'm like, "Oh yeah, this is what happened." So the technology was a real big component in that. Not everybody's going to look at technology that way, but what that does, it allows you to kind of prove what you're doing. And I remember that conversation, and there was, that's just one example of how somebody said, "Okay, yeah, I'm going to go and do my own thing because, I want to be, it's individual to me, and I needed this and I need that." Okay, cool. And then he came back, open arms, never had a, it wasn't like, "Screw that guy, he don't know what he's talking about." It was just an open embrace. And that was one of those cases where it's like all these things help, the technology, the stuff we were doing. And then he's, obviously he's doing great. And it's just a matter of time before you see him on the main roster.
What's amazing about that is, and this harkens back to my time working with the military and meeting various special forces, and I'm not allowed to say their name publicly, but one of the things that we saw, one of the special force groups, they're like, "Look, if it matters to protecting our lives and saving the lives of our countrymen, we're going to do it." And I think it goes into this narrative of like, when you work with any of these groups that have a lot of autonomy with what and where they do, like WWE superstars or NFL athletes, like a lot of people don't really appreciate that. Hey, there's a lot of like there's a lot of like managing egos and certain things, like, right. I mean, not trying to say that Tom Brady and his trainer with the strength staff in New England and Tampa Bay is disruptive, but that strength coach who's walking around Tampa Bay has to be respectful of him based off of, like, essentially he's the GM and he's the guy, right? And you as a strength coach need to be able to swallow your own pride and your ego. But there's a moment, right? There's this moment do you go to that person and go, hey, what your perception of me at one point is maybe fair, but look how we've evolved. And you know why we've evolved? Because we tested and we
Mhm.
found out gaps and we found out areas we can improve upon. That perception at one point, and maybe it was just your first impression or maybe it was accurate. But
Mhm.
now, what I am now, relatively speaking to that, and what I can provide you based off of what I've learned from folks like yourself, like I'm gonna go do this by myself, or we found areas or limitations from our programming, relatively speaking, to the KPIs that we assigned, and we invested money, we invested time. Like, you can't just add velocity based training or force stacks or force plates in any kind of capacity without putting some time and learning how to use them or understand them, right? Like,
Yeah,
it's not
no
just this
doubt.
simple buy it and it'll happen. It's not like
Right.
this, like, oh, I got my force plates, check that box. Like,
Right.
it's a lot of time, energy, and effort that goes into figuring out how to use it and then implementing it into your program and then interpreting that information and then selling that. And then what happens is you have a elite level athlete, and much like special forces or working in NFL, like, the athletes they'll believe more into you if you're capable of growing and evolving to what their needs are. And
Absolutely.
the only one way to do that is to evaluate your programming, relatively speaking, to a baseline. And that's where KPIs really come in, and having that awareness. And it started off as, how do we create some sort of like true north here and vector, give something to push towards. But in the other end, it gives you something like, oh, dang, I really have a limitation in this programming. I need to get more cardiovascular machines. I need to get velocity based training. I need to get force plate technology. I need to get body composition analysis. I need to get these things to really give me some sort of like indication if I'm doing a good job or not. And then all the athletes walk in and go, "Damn, I really appreciate you giving me that effort." So with all that being said, and I think there's another actually really big talking point here, and we haven't talked about it yet, but NXT expanded to more than just outside of Florida, right? And you
Yeah.
had you had a location in another country that you almost had to like almost start from scratch again. And I think this is like another moment is hopefully going to give you a great segue into your next venture in your career. But like, working remotely and blindly, like, is when you were looking at NXT in England, were there some things that you're like, okay, this matters, a substantial thing? Does it go back to, let's get them training as a team, let's get into these combine things, and let's start to learn from that from an equipment standpoint? Like, what was your approach when you had a completely remote location that you weren't seeing more than once a year?
Yeah, that was man, that was some of the most rewarding experiences that I've had is that NXT UK, because we literally start I can show you pictures. We literally started with a one of those it's like the three-sided cages, right? It's like a squat rack on, a squat rack next to it and squat rack behind you have three. And that's what we started. It was just like that med balls, some bumper plates, and a couple plyo boxes. That's what we had to train 50 people in the UK. And we did it. And the main thing for that was the main thing with that was getting set up of the flow, and like, this is what I want to bring to my next stop. The flow of like how a workout is. A lot of these people, a lot of these athletes, they did not know how a workout should be, right? Like, they walked in, they got to the, well, whatever gym they're in, they start hitting, right? They do a chest day or they do a back day and just start going. So the big thing for me was educate, teach. Hey, we're gonna roll out. We're gonna self myofascial release. Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna do foam roll. We're gonna do lacrosse balls. Okay. Next thing we're gonna do, we're gonna mobilize those joints. Right. We're gonna go. And then these things progress as you get smarter and you evolve yourself, because you see what's latest is out there. And but no, you're gonna do some sort of mobility drills to open up those joints to create a window so that you're able to kind of like optimally train. And then we want to activate those muscles, right? That we don't necessarily that we're turned off all day. Where those are your glutes, those are your upper back, right? Sitting, you and I sitting in this position right now, our upper back's turned off, our glutes are turned off. We're not really bracing our core. So just kind of educating them on like, all right, here's how a workout should flow. And then we prime ourselves open, or we prime ourselves for that lift. We do something explosive, boom, bam, boom. That's why we had the med balls. And then we're gonna lift. And we're gonna lift like joint friendly exercises because you're always getting banged on your backs, you're always getting thrown into a canvas, hitting the ropes. And then, that was kind of like the main thing, is educating them on what we were doing down in Orlando. And then it was make the weight room look like the one in Orlando. So that way, like, you had trap bars, you had safety squat bars, you had turf, you had racks. And then, but it started off with small, which it was, I'll text you these pictures. It's crazy. Like just a small little jungle gym rack, and then it was med balls, and that's how it started. But they appreciated it because it never had anything. Those guys never had a lick. So that's how we trained for several months like that. And then Triple H put some money towards it, made this weight room. Boom, we freaking, created this nice weight room. Sornex did a great job with our turf and the racks and everything. And then that I'm so glad we did it that way, because man, when they saw that, they were like, man, they earned it, and so then it was like, once we had that, then we started getting into the combine stuff and really trying to measure their broad jumps and things like that. But it started off with how it flows, what the system is, right? And then we kind of created a weight room. So very similar to what this process was down in NXT. There was a little bit more time, and the pandemic kind of got in the way of that. That was a real big, it's unfortunate because that kind of limited us from going over there, and we didn't really have, we were doing the best we could remote training, but it was kind of getting to that point where, like, yeah, we were going to have this big combine where the UK people were going to come down and compete, and oh yeah, it was going to be huge. So, and then things just like everybody throughout the country got hit with that thing, the pandemic, and we had to kind of pivot and things like that. But yeah, that was the kind of the process training over there, and that's kind of like what I want to bring to the XFL. When we put this team together, is like, hey, this is how, look, your bodies get banged up playing football. When you go to the gym, it's not just working out. It's a mini recovery session. You want to feel good, right? So here's how that we can do that, right? We can do it. Okay, we roll out, we hit some cars, we activate the muscles that we're weak in. We do something explosive. Okay, now we train, right? And then you can, from your assessments or your FMS, whatever, we can kind of figure out, hey, how can we do what the majority needs? How can we do what specific athletes need? And then how does it all kind of look? But it should have a general flow. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of like how we can educate, right? First thing you got to do with the new space, new team, new league, educate, make the weight rooms kind of look how you want them. And then, that's kind of like big picture is why I'm so grateful for the experiences we had at the WWE. Hopefully that kind of, helps us with this new venture.
And this comes up quite a bit, and you and I can relate to this, is, it's easy to talk about in hindsight once we get the rooms the way we want them, but we got to get out there and talk about why we need certain things and why we need certain equipment and certain staffing. It costs a lot of money, and the reality of the situation is, unless we have something objective to go to our superiors and say, we need this much money to get these tools and this staff, and even this education to support that, they're not just going to go, oh yeah, Sean says it's great, right? Where you have an archetype now because you built in, like, hey, you want that person that's going up to SmackDown and Raw, you want that person that's all pro playing all 16 games. Well, here's the tools that we need. It's going to get us racks, med balls, kettlebells, blah, blah, blah. It's going to need this much staff to help coach this and support this and motivate those athletes. And from there, you go, okay, this is where we want to be, and we're going to reverse engineer that process. And here's what's going to cost. And if you don't have that outcome, if you can't create that visual image or that archetype for that general manager, that president, that CFO, whoever it is, that's like the no person, right? That's where the buck stops.
Right.
You're not having a leg to stand on. So when you're a strength coach and you go, damn man, we don't have enough resources, we don't have enough more. It's not a matter of you not having enough. It's you're not able to convince someone that's deciding whether you should have that or not, that it's important enough.
Right.
And you have to be able to create that. And I think it comes again to having standards and creating tests and going, well, we can't do that unless we have these tools or have these people. How are we going to get that? Like, I can tell you we can do it without it, but that would be a lie. And this would help us. It'd be a lot more linear. We could probably Jimmy rig something, but it'd be a lot linear and a lot better. And at the end, when you start to evaluate the cost of all these things in hindsight, it just didn't happen like that. And then it's going to say, here's a blank check and do what you want. It was a lot of coercing and a lot of, hey, we're coming up short here. Here's where we need support. We want this. We need this. How are we going to get to in between? And as you start to look at now this next venture and you're going like, it's so easy to look back in hindsight. Like, well, this is what we had at the end over 6 years of talking to athletes and talking to coaches and talking to the people that make decisions on money to now like, oh man, it's going to take a long, slow process to building out. And the same thing with myself in my situations. Like, I start from year one at our first Allegiate to what it costs to actually build that out over the course of 6 years and outfitting that with not just 6 racks, benches, and bars. It's a much more intricate thing with a bunch of other things I've added over the years. And now starting day one with everything all the other locations have, like, okay, this has gotten pretty expensive quickly, but it was necessary.
Yeah.
And it actually became unequivocally important because of the testing. Like, we know that we need this stuff and we can't get around it without it. And I just, as we look back over this stuff, like, I think there's a couple of big things that hopefully all strength coaches who are listening to this, like, all right, we're always selling our program. And then we shouldn't take for granted that someone should give us something based off we want it. We have to convince someone that we need it based off of some sort of standards that we aren't getting to. So all that being said, everything going through, what is your thoughts of KPIs in this, next venture? And you don't have to get super specific, but, one of the things that I think would be helpful based on everything you learn, like, are you going to use a similar model? Are you going to use something that's going to be specific to this? Like, are you going to go more back to your roots with the Texans and Penn State and then time at Harvard? Like, where are you thinking? Where's your head going in this direction? And, and it could even go into a higher level of how are you evaluating your staff, right? Like, you're going to have a huge staff underneath you and you can look at them and go, okay, this is how I'm evaluating you and your ability to do your job at a high level.
Yeah. So great question. I think like just hearing that talk about, how the rooms have evolved. I think we bring and what we want to bring to XFL. I think something that's like, you talk about racks and med balls, and kettlebells. Like one of the things that I feel like that you need, right, is these force plates, and I think they're just so valuable. And like that's going to be a big KPI for us. And then not so much as like you got to jump a certain height, but just like monitoring fatigue. You talk about like you want to take care of this athlete, and you want that athlete to play 10 weeks, in a full season. When in the XFL will be 10 weeks plus training camp. You're going to need to monitor. You're going to need to to make sure they're monitor their fatigue and load management, things like that. So I think I would absolutely love to bring the force plates in to the XFL because I think it's a crucial part. And then you can kind of play that for a 2-for-1 deal there. You use that for load management, but then you can also use that for like a KPI, whether that's a IMTP pull or just a straight up vertical jump. So I think those are crucial because they can do so much. And then you kind of have to look at what a football player needs. And then with our case, a lot of these KPIs happen in the off season, right? Like where maybe in a football setting they're going to hit their testing stuff as when they in the off season, because now when they get to training camp, it's all about ball. We're not going to have that luxury with XFL. We're going to be training remotely, so we have to get creative as a staff. Like maybe like what do we do with our KPIs from a distance, right? Is that you could take a look at like what Brandon McDaniel's doing with the Dodgers. They do some cool stuff with some med ball throws. Like I really like that, like for power. Football players need power. So there's some cool things we could do with med balls. It's simple. It's not CNS like taxing where you're like, oh man, I worry about getting them hurt for camp. We could definitely do some overhead med ball toss, some chest throws, some things like that, your broads. And so like I think it's just like a matter of two things. What we feel like as a staff is important to test, and then what isn't gonna, like, we don't have them coming in like in the off season to where we have that luxury to like do that and really like hit them hard. Like with WWE, I was able to hit them hard, right? If you do those 8 KPIs in 2 days, you're drained. Yeah. So we were able to like, hey, when do we not have wrestling this weekend? So we were able to kind of plug that in. We had that luxury. We might not have that luxury with the XFL, probably won't. So it's like maybe it's a one arm row, the bird dog row that Coach Heenan does with his with the 90-mile-an-hour row. Like maybe we do something cool with that, and it's like have them film it, but it's got to kind of make sure that we don't tap into their ability to kind of go into training camp, which I think it's just a matter of us being collaborative, being communicative as a staff, and then hiring good people that are kind of like thinking about the same stuff and realize the importance of player availability and KPIs, and then we can kind of create something from scratch. And I think it has to be something that doesn't tax them for the training camp, but it's something that definitely can be done. So, whether that's med ball tosses, whether that's 80% of your body weight for a single leg lunge or a single arm row for strength or pull-ups test, things like that. Yeah, I think we could definitely do it. You're still at the end of the day, you're training human beings, right? In athletes, and athletes need to be powerful. They need to be strong. They need to be, and have stamina. So that's something that's definitely thinking about as we kind of go down this venture. And I'm excited to kind of talk through those things with our team once we get it in place. But no doubt, because if you don't have it, how do you know whether or not you're doing a good job or not, right? How do you know what to tell the guys? Hey, this is where you need to improve. That's going to be a big thing. Like these players want to make it to the NFL, right? That's their goal. Here's our opportunity. Like it shouldn't just be like you come in the weight room and be like, all right, man, let's do this workout and get to the NFL. No, here's what you got to get better on. You want to get to the league? Here's where you can improve on. See how you came in, see how like you only did like this for your KPI here? Like we could get you here. You got a good shot of going. Yeah. So I think it's not something that would be, I think it's a necessity to have just because you're in player development, and you can sit there and say like, you can either just have good workouts, or you can say, hey, you're in a true player development setting, in a high performance setting. And that's where it kind of like differentiates for me as well, and I think you would agree, like that's the difference. So massively important. And it's just a matter of kind of talking through that with that team and seeing what we can come up with, but I'm excited about it.
Yeah. It's funny too, because it makes me think about the opposite end of the spectrum of working with a coach that has been doing it for a while and pretty set in their ways, right? And you have to go, why are we doing this? And the classic example was when I worked at Army, Coach Monken would run 300-yard shuttle tests at the beginning of preseason, right? So finish off-season workouts, go to preseason, and then we have like Sunday night, like report day, 300-yard shuttles. And it was O-lineman, two 300-yard shuttles under 65 seconds, combo 62, and then skill 60, like 25 events 6 times.
And then they got practice the next day, right?
Yeah. So, right. And I can remember when I was at Georgia Tech, Paul Johnson's been doing this for 40 years, right? I mean, time he was at Georgia Southern all the way through Navy, and then time at Georgia Tech, and it was not going to change. And it just wasn't. And Monken worked for Coach Johnson for 30 of those years, right? I mean, it was a really long time, and incredible level of success everywhere they've been. And I remember that first preseason. We're going through the schedule, and Monken's like, "All right, you know, what time should we do the 300-yard shuttles?" And I was like, "Do we have to do them?" And he's like, "Yeah, yeah, of course we do." And I was like, "Well, what does that say about me not doing my job in the off season, right?" Like, and he's like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Well, if I have all the guys there throughout the entire summer, and they come in there for the 6 weeks that we have, and they're getting after it for all 6 weeks, and we have certain standards and KPIs that we're meeting, right? From a performance standpoint, we're making improvement. Guys are going through all the workouts and doing everything they got to do to help them prepare for preseason. Does that say that you don't believe that I'm doing my job, or is that necessary? Like, the reason why I was there is because at one point at Georgia Southern, guys would go home for the summer and you needed something to hold accountable to when they come back of like, hey, we got this test, and if you can't pass it, you got to do it every day till you pass it to give some sort of impetus to do that, right? I'm sure similar to Harvard if you went away. And I get that point from there, but it's like it's different. We've evolved. But I'll tell you, if we can get to July and we can do 40 perfect agilities, meaning that we don't touch a line, or we touch the right line, we don't knock over a cone, and we turn the right direction for 40 programmed agilities, I think that would be an adequate indication that we're in physical shape for preseason camp. I'm like, come out and watch it. So he came out and watched it, and first couple of weeks was pretty rough, right? Like a lot of callbacks. Over the course of 3 weeks, he comes out there for the third, fourth week, massive improvement, right? And we're not just kind of giving it to them, right? They're doing everything right. They're executing. And I'm like, physically, cognitively, emotionally, they're all ready. We don't need to do this 300-yard shuttle test. And he's like, fair enough. That's good. You proved to me that we don't need to do 300 shuttle test. And we don't have this issue of a bunch of hamstring pulls on practice one because guys are absolutely gassed. The alternative is when we were at Georgia Tech, we did 300-yard shuttles every week to prepare for a 300-yard shuttle test, knowing that's not in the best interest of the athletes. We're not working speed of power, working energy system is probably not specific. These things are just not relevant. And to be honest, that, and then showing over time, this like force deck stuff. We use for jump mats at the time, wellness, RPE, workloads, catapult, everything we could use to show in season we don't need to do post practice conditioning. Over time, we were able to convince them that that was unnecessary as well. If we're going 24 periods, practicing really hard, 3-4 days a week, we don't need to do end of practice conditioning.
Right.
That's just excess, and it's probably leading to more fatigue, right? It's fitness masked by fatigue. So we get into this element of, I remember he said it to me after year one, and I wasn't going to win that one. It was like, we're doing post-practice conditioning, and he ran it off. It was just a bloodbath. And it eventually led to all the varsity guys were over doing Muscle Beach with us, doing push-ups and sit-ups, until the scout guys who just got destroyed for 24 periods finished conditioning. He would write to me at the end of the year. He's like, we look slower than we were in September. I was like, so let's get this straight. They were faster in September than we were in November, and we've been practicing 3-4 days a week for the past 12, 16 weeks. Do you think it's a matter of fatigue, or we've been a lack of effort? And he's like, it's fatigue. You know that, right? Workloads are sky high, all these things. But unless we had compelling evidence and objective data to show him from catapult and workloads, then we wouldn't be able to win that. So that next year, we were able to say, hey, here's our energy system development. Here's how we develop our perimeter guys to meet the demands of practice. Here's our interior guys and what they do to meet their bioenergetic demands in practice. Here's how we progress this week over week, month over month, from one phase to the next. We don't need to do a conditioning test, and we don't need to do post-practice conditioning. It's unnecessary. It's actually leading to a performance decrement.
Right.
And those are some areas that I was able to convince them through KPIs. But the other end, it's you get a blank slate. And you're going to have to get out there in front with a bunch of people who have their ways, right? Like a bunch of coaches. Like, this is the way I've always done it. This is the way my coach did it. And saying like, no, we have actually like a compelling evidence to show that we don't need to do it that way. trust our process, and we'll show you unequivocally through objective data that we're going to do it. And on both ends, again,
Right.
we're always selling. We're always
Right.
selling.
Always.
We're always selling to the person that's done it always this way, or
Yep.
the person that could be convinced in a new setting or new environment that we're going to do it this way. And
And that's where you got to be a good connector, because you got to, what your example with Coach Monken right there is like, hey, come out there and watch agilities. Like you didn't go into his office and say, I'm not doing it. Screw you. We don't need this. Now you were able to connect with him and kind of give a little, oh yeah, just come out here and see. And if not, you're right. And I think that's where, you know, the most of, like, whether it's coach, whether it's player, whether it's staff, like you got to be a good connector, you got to be a good listener, and then hey, who knows? He could, like, you got to be open to new ideas and whether the coach is right or things like that. So just being able to be a good connector is going to be huge for us. And I think, like, one thing that I like, man, we're the people that are involved in the XFL is just, they're just top notch, and they're super collaborative, and it's like that's the reason why I wanted to kind of be a part of it, because they are, we're already kind of, talking about these things, and we're we're 4 or 5 months out, so like we're already having these conversations, and it's like, man, it's pretty cool, and we do want to be the league of tomorrow, and that's the exciting thing. What does that look like, right? Like, what, is it people playing football on jetpacks? No, it's using the technology that's available after all these years of, like you said, of after, how things have always been done, and then trying to find a way where it's like, hey, still practice hard, still football at the end of the day, but here's some ways that we can kind of maximize our performance, and keep guys healthy. And so that's the exciting part. And yeah, it's just kind of, it's using it's taking what we learned with muscle mentorship, right? At the end of the day, it's the more information you have, the better decisions you can make. And that is something that's huge, that's really helped me out going to muscle mentorship is, hey, take all the information that you can get and then kind of present it and sell it, right? Because you're constantly selling. So present it to the athlete, present it to the coach. And the other day, like you mentioned this about, some autonomy with the athletes at WB, like, if you present the information well enough, it should all be autonomous. It should all be kind of autonomous, right? Like with your guys at Legion, like, you're just like, hey, you want to get better? Like, what are your goals? You want to look better and feel better, and look over your shirt off and do it all year round. Well, here's come to Allegiant. We're going to provide you the tools to do that, right? And if you say screw off, I'm not doing this, I want to go to F45 or somewhere else, then fine. Like, that's fine. But you're presenting the tools for them to do with that. Same thing with XFL. Same thing with anything. WWE. Hey, we got force plates here. We got the tools for you to get what you want to be. You want to go to the NFL? Here, here's what we got the tools to provide that for you. If you say screw off, okay, no, I got you. You know what I mean? I get it. But it shouldn't be a do this. You got to do it our way. Like, we should just be like, hey, educate. Whether it's sleep, whether it's, hey man, how many times I've had the aura conversation with WWE athletes, like, what's that thing on your finger? Oh man, sleep, man. Like, HRV, really good indicator of your readiness. Like, your resting heart rate, really good indicator of, like, your recovery and your fitness levels. Like, oh man, you just educate. You don't tell them to get it. You don't say, oh, you got to have the aura. You just, you're just constantly educating. And it's like, that's another big thing that I'm going to take with me is, it's not a do it this way or else. It's a constant educating thing, and that's kind of like, if you provide those tools, they really want to make it to the next level, they'll listen to, or like, hey, they'll go outside and find out that what they had is what they'll come back to you,
Yeah.
and that's kind of like what I've learned too is it's okay if if not everybody is like buying into your stuff. It's okay. And that's kind of like what a big thing that I learned in WWE. Like, it's all right. It's okay. You got to evolve, and you might not ever. It doesn't have to be that way. It's like, so that's kind of like what I'm going to take with me as well. And yeah, it's super excited. And I see I see that, it's funny because like our worlds parallel so much. Like, when I was with WWE, we paralleled as far as like scheduling and what our clientele wants, right? Like, your clientele want to look good, feel good, and do it all year round. Same with WWE. And it's like, now our worlds parallel even more because you're always posting Small Business Chronicles, man. Like, oh man, like I didn't go to school for this. Like, how to hang shit. It's like, that's what I'm doing now. Like, I'm in this small business world, and like starting from scratch. So it's like, we can't get away from each other as far
I
as
know.
like our worlds parallel. So it's just funny, man. Like, it's crazy to think of it that way, but it's so true. Like, we're a small business starting from scratch. So it's like, every time I see your SBC Small Business Chronicles on your story, it's like I can relate. I know what you're going through.
But you know what's amazing about that too, and you mentioned aura and how we were talking about this a couple weeks ago about how much your training is reactive to that now, right? Like, we have this definition of hard training, right? It's going to be, 4 days a week, upper lower split, whatever and this is my hard training, right? Right
Right.
now, I mean, you're in a startup mode. I'm in a startup mode. We got a lot of moving parts. You wake up, and as a good friend of mine used to say, we're just trying to have a good shitty day. Aura says I'm a 41 readiness. I don't have the ability to do a high CNS loaded day. I
Right.
don't. So
Right.
I'm going to go out there and do what I can. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to get some
Mm-hmm.
sunlight. I'm going to maybe do some zone 2 cardio. Maybe I'm going to do some accessory work. And that's it. That's my training
Yeah.
every day. But isn't that something that you look through with your XFL athletes and you're saying, we're going to get to the tail end of preseason? What is our ability, right? Everyone's going to come out guns blazing, go hard, try to make a roster. What is their ability on week 4 preseason or getting towards right before postseason where everyone knows their fate? Either they're going into playoffs or they're not. And everyone's motivation is either really low or really, really up, and you're having to manage all of that, and you're looking at their readiness, their workloads, their wellness, and you're going, how do I have a really good shitty day for every single person here? Because I've been there myself. Like,
Yeah.
if you were going to say, like, damn, I didn't do 90% on barbell back squat today, and I didn't do a set of PR on this exercise today, I was a waste of my time. That is the farthest thing from the truth,
Yeah.
right? You woke up 41 readiness, sleep was like a 10, all these really low scores. Like, all right, what is the best thing I could do today for me? That's a win.
Yeah.
And I don't think you know that because if you're only going off this baseline without any testing or any kind of diagnostic to support like that. And it's not saying that you're coasting. What it is saying is that you're being reactive to the things that are absolutely true. And then when the time does come and readiness skyrockets and
Now you're ready to.
schedule set it, yeah, and that's when you know you capitalize on it.
Right.
But again, going into this idea of like, unless we're doing some sort of testing and diagnostic of where we're at, you don't really know, and you don't appreciate that, and you don't have this like awareness of it, and then you kind of scratch your head of like, damn, performance was really shitty with my team today. Like, that wasn't our best day. I wonder what it was. I wonder if there was something I could have done beforehand to know that was going to be a shitty day, or I wonder if there was something I could do from an inventory standpoint to ensure that everything we're doing is the best we could possibly do on that given day based off of the needs of the athlete, right? And
Yeah.
that's why high low comes into play. That's why all these things have to evolve
Yeah.
because you know that there's a certain limit to what someone can do, and then there's ebbs and flows and motivation and
Yeah.
workloads, and you
If
have to have
if
some
we
sort
can get in
of
front
tool.
of that, if we can kind of know that and program for that from the gate, from the get go, I think that we're putting the athlete first.
Mhm.
And because we were putting them in their head, and we talked about it. You mentioned this at Muscle Mentorship. Be selfish, right? Do it for you. Get the information for you, and it'll trickle down to your athletes. And that's kind of like, I just texted you a few days ago. Actually, beginning of the week, I'm like, I'm switching my workout routine. For the longest I can remember, I was upper, or I was like lower upper recovery day, lower upper, kind of recover on the weekends. and I just hit you up. I texted you. I said, man, I'm going high low approach, right? I'm going train, walk, train, walk, train, and it's like because this new job is mentally, it's stressing. It's Small Business Chronicles. It's you're on the computer. I'm getting a bunch of blue light all freaking day, and it's like, okay, and I wouldn't have known the ebb and flow, the high low approach if I didn't go to you and learn from you. And it's like that's something that we can take and bring to our athletes with the XFL. Like, hey, you're gonna have hard practices, man. Like you're gonna. So let's piggyback that with maybe a lower intensity day, and we can even educate some of the coaches maybe like, hey, okay, yeah, hey, you got after him here. Okay, how about a little bit of a walkthrough type day here, and then we pick it back up, and then we can kind of educate them as well, and as long as we're all collaborative and we're all kind of thinking the same way, player first mode, what's best, I think we got a good shot of doing something cool. And just really, that's, but yeah, it's just funny you mentioned high low, and it's like how I did that today, this week myself personally, and I loved it. And yeah, get after it on Monday, go for a walk on Tuesday. You're like, I don't care. Like I could be feeling great. I'm still going to go for a walk because I know that day's going to be stressful. Right. I know I'm going to be sore from the day before. So it's like, it's just setting those plans in place to kind of help you withstand all the stressors and things like that. So yeah, it's working out so good. We'll keep it rocking and rolling with the high low approach.
Well, and it's interesting though too, of like the track and field where it really evolved from. You do have that definitive output measure, right? Did you run across the line faster than you would if you didn't train? Football has every Sunday, Saturday, right? And that's where it becomes like really easy to justify it. It's when you don't have that. When it's Groundhog's Day of preseason, it's 30 days straight of practice. You
Yep.
don't have that like, oh man, that practice sucked. Like what the fuck? These guys don't care.
Right.
Like, well, we just did 24 periods of full contact practice. Pretty much 24 of which were basically Oklahoma drill and team yesterday. Yeah, I could have told you that was going to be bad based off of the workloads and everything else that went into it. Not to mention this too, of like you basically just told them how bad they were for 3 hours straight, and then meetings right now are telling you how bad you were. Like emotionally, physically, and cognitively, they're pretty drained. I can't imagine the day after is going to be good. So having that discipline and that structure to understand that physiology and psychology and motivations, ebbs and flows are going to be, or spiritually, whatever way you want to define it, this like constant up and down seesaw effect of we need to get out in front on that, and we need to understand that today's the day we're going to overreach and push really hard, but there needs to be a little bit of yin following that, or a little bit of the hey, we're going to do a walkthrough today, or hey, we're going to do a little bit more time in the meeting room, a little less time on the field, or we're going to just go helmets, or we're just going to play just games, right? We're going to do games and situational stuff and just make them think, but not move a whole lot. Whatever it is that makes sense for that coach and that staff to get the best performance possible. But you can't fight physiology, and you can't do more than what your body's capable of doing on that given day. And for us,
it's that stress fatigue model.
Yeah.
You
And for
can't.
us, yeah.
Can't do it. Can't outdo it.
No. And I think that's too of like, it's just a great lesson for us. And especially as we get older, the margins become smaller, right? We don't have that as much bandwidth once we get 30, and then you get 40, and then you get 50. And it's like that, the freedom or the bandwidth to handle more than you probably can becomes less and less and less.
Yeah.
And you realize
your 4-day split gonna probably go down to a 3-day split.
Yeah, exactly. And you're just, hey, again, just trying to make the most out of every single day possible. But hey, well, Sean, I honestly, I think that's an amazing like conversation, honestly. And this was really cool, and I appreciate you taking the time. Any closing words for anybody who's listening from just from your experience at WWE, what you're going with XFL, or just anything you want to kind of talk about, closing it off with KPIs?
Yeah, I would say, just to kind of reiterate, the more information you have, the better decision you can make, whether that's an Aura ring, whether that's force plate, whether that's velocity based, like the objective data that you have can lead to better informed decisions. I think that's a really good, really cool thing that I've taken and helped me evolve as a coach. Anyone's out there is listening. Don't be afraid if you don't know it. If you know, like, I don't know, how am I going to learn this? Like, just dive in, right? Like, and the other thing that'll help you with it'll help you. Like, if you're thinking about, you know, getting that raise, or, you know, wanting to get more buy-in with the players, like that information, if you want to bet on yourself, that information's there to kind of like show your head coach or show your coaching staff, like, hey, this is what we're doing. Like, but you don't have that if you don't have the information. So the more information that you have, the better decisions we can make. That's kind of like a key thing I've taken away from you, and going all those years of muscle mentorship. And so yeah, so I would say that it's a big one, big take home for me.
Amazing, man. Well, thank you again for your time, and uh, everyone knows where to find you. Floor Hayes over at
Hey,
on
8th Street.
Instagram. Yeah, dude, it's the best, man.
Hey.
And it's gonna get, and that whole thing is getting refurbished and redesigned. So I can't wait to see the finished product, man. That's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, we got to get if the rain. If the rain ever stops here, I'm building it right in the start of hurricane season, so it's probably not a
Really,
good idea. But
uh,
hey, small business chronicles, man.
that's it, man. That's it. No doubt. I can't wait to have your Fit B and B
You go to
out
school for
there.
that? Did I?
Ah,
No, I didn't. No, I didn't go to
no
school for
idea. Just winging it, man. Just winging it. That's awesome, man. Well, thank you again,
that.
man. This is so cool, and appreciate you getting on. And I hope everyone enjoys, man.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Coach. We'll do it again for sure.
Absolutely.